Hey guys, tonight, we continue once again as I stand at the amphitheater's highest tier. The bronze sky stretching without end and the city sprawled below like a perfect model waiting for its next move. The laurel-marked roof from the mosaic gleams faintly in the distance, catching a light that does not seem to touch anything else. The sound of the rope wheel is softer up here, almost hesitant, as if it knows I have noticed it. The air is cooler, carrying hints of fennel and something sharper, like ink freshly ground on a slab. I start down a sloping stair that curves around the outer wall. The stone worn into shallow grooves by centuries of feet. Mainstream fact floats in. Roman amphitheaters often had vomitoria leading to exterior streets for crowd control. But this path feels more like a processional route, narrow and precise, designed to deliver someone exactly where they are meant to arrive. Fringe thought leans in. Some ghost city tales insist the streets themselves were part of the ritual space, guiding the initiate without allowing deviation. The stair deposits me into a colonnaded street that smells faintly of warm bread, though no shopfronts are open. Each column carved at the base with a different object: key, rope, amphorae, wave, laurel, bread, eye, repeating in no particular order. I pass under them, the shadows seeming to stretch ahead in the same pattern, until the laurel-marked roof vanishes behind a wall, and I enter a small square I have never seen before, its paving stones set in concentric circles that mirror the marks the cylinder made in the arena sand. In the center stands a low round building, its door ajar, the bronze hinges etched with tiny bees. I push it open and step into a single circular chamber lined with shelves, each shelf holding only one object, all different. Wax tablets, clay jars, lengths of rope, bronze plaques, folded cloth, none dusty, all arranged as if just placed there. In the center of the room is a pedestal shaped like an open palm, the same depression I have found in so many other places. My pockets feel heavy, the golden grain warm and the dormant grain cold. The bronze eye vibrating faintly. I place the active grain into the palm and the shelves respond. One object from each sliding forward slightly, as if offered. I step toward a wax tablet and the surface ripples, showing an image of the laurel-marked roof from above. Then flashing to the granary, the arena, and a dark place I do not know. A quick sequence like a breath held too long and then released. The grain cools, the objects slide back into place, and the door swings shut behind me without sound. A panel opens in the far wall, revealing a narrow stair spiraling downward. The air cooler with each step, carrying the faint sound of the rope while turning again. Steady now, no hesitation, each rotation like a clock hand settling into its mark. And though I can't see the rope yet, I know it is waiting at the bottom, ready to lead me deeper. The stair winds down into darkness that smells faintly of salt and charred wood. The steps smooth and slightly concave from long use, my hand gliding along the cold stone wall until the air shifts and grows warmer, carrying the rhythm of the rope will like a heartbeat under the floor. I emerge into a wide underground hall supported by columns whose capitals are carved not with leaves but with the same symbols I saw on the colonnaded street above. Key, rope, amphorae, wave, laurel, bread, eye, each one catching the low golden light that filters from sconces along the walls. Mainstream fact tethers me. Roman substructures were often designed for storage, animal holding pens, or machinery for lifts, but here the symmetry feels ceremonial. Too deliberate to be purely practical, fringe stories tell of echo halls beneath arenas and temples, tuned so that even a whisper could travel like a command to hidden mechanisms. I step forward and the floor responds with a faint vibration, a circle etched into the stone around the central space. Beginning to glow softly, the rope descends from a hole in the ceiling, slow and precise, its end tied into a loop large enough to fit over my shoulders. It sways gently toward me as if inviting. I slip the loop over my chest and the rope tightens just enough to hold before it begins to pull. guiding me across the hall toward a tall arch in the far wall. Beyond it is a corridor lined with niches, each holding an object wrapped in dark cloth, some shaped like amphorae, others like bundles of scrolls, none labeled. The rope leads me past them without pause until we reach a heavy bronze door with the numeral 7 engraved deep into its surface. The rope unwinds from me and coils neatly at my feet as the door swings open on its own, revealing a small chamber lit by a single oil lamp. In the center sits a table with a shallow bronze bowl filled with liquid so dark it swallows the light. I lean over it and the surface stirs, showing not my reflection but the map mosaic from the atrium, the routes glowing again, this time all leading to the laurel-marked roof. The image shifts to the inside of that building, a shadow moving between shelves, and then to the arena floor, the hatch open, the cylinder gone, the sand marked with a single 7. The image fades and the water stills. The rope at my feet gives a sharp twitch, coiling into a tight knot before relaxing, and I understand it is time to leave. But as I step toward the door, the lamp flares, casting my shadow long across the wall. And in its outline I see a second shadow just behind me, standing perfectly still. The second shadow keeps my outline company for a full breath before it does the one thing a shadow should not. It nods, the movement small as a moth's wing. And then it flattens back into ordinary darkness as if embarrassed to have opinions. I turn slowly, the oil lamp humming, the bronze bowl calm again, and tell the room out loud that I will be leaving now because narrating my intentions helps the nerves file their paperwork. The corridor outside accepts me with a draft that smells of rope and old ink. The loop of line waiting at the threshold like a patient dog deciding whether to heel. It slithers ahead once I step through and I follow into a section of tunnel I do not remember, the walls closer, the ceiling lower, the niches empty of wrapped objects as though the shelves stepped out for air. Stone underfoot changes texture, smooth to pebbled and back, until we come to a door engraved with the laurel and the eye, the emblem of the roof I saw from above. The rope gives a polite nudge at my ankle and I push. The door opens into a stair that climbs tight and fast, my hands sliding along a rail polished by hands I prefer not to picture. Near the top the air warms and thins, picking up a sweetness like figs left in a sun that does not move. I emerge beneath that laurel-marked roof at last, and the room beneath it is less temple than workshop arranged by someone who believed tidiness was a form of prayer. Shelves in a ring, each holding a single tool, stylus, ladle, small mallet, reed, tiny bronze mirror. No dust, no ash, only the quiet glow of a skylight that drinks the bronze sky and pours it down. Like syrup, in the middle stands a waist-high table of black basalt carved with shallow channels. A city in capillaries, the rope coils beside it and stops. Mainstream fact to anchor the hands, Roman water clocks, clepsydry, timed hours by flow through calibrated holes. Their basins often inscribed to mark the changing length of seasonal hours. Here the channels look like streets and the holes like doors, and that feels less like timekeeping and more like a map that insists on passing for plumbing. I set the bronze eye on the table because it is humming hard enough to be impolite, and it skates a finger's breadth on its own to a notch shaped exactly for it. A thin thread of liquid slides from the skylight's rim, though I can't see a source, splits at a junction, and begins to trace a path through the channels without spilling. Fringe detail rolls up uninvited. Certain antiquarians swore some private shrines were built with water writing, trickles that spelled omens to a patient reader, and though that sounds like a riddle carved by a bored plumber, the line in front of me is forming letters, first a curve like C, then a pivot into an I, then a crooked hook of a 7 as if the stone can't help repeating itself. Historians still debate whether private domestic cults in Rome were truly as codified as the public ones or whether families improvised with borrowed symbols. A debate I would happily moderate once the furniture stops nodding at me. Because yes, the table gives a delicate tilt as the water completes its circuit and drains with a sigh. The rope taps my calf, a reminder, and I lift the golden grain onto the basalt. It's carved bright and hot, the dormant twin in my other pocket cold as a coin forgotten in winter. I set the warm seed into a shallow depression, and the room answers with a soft click from the shelves. 3 tools shift forward, the mirror, the reed, the mallet, as if I have been offered a choice. Joke one for the night to keep the tempo relaxed. I am not taking the mallet. The city has enough headaches without my help. I pick up the mirror and it refuses my face, choosing instead to show the amphitheater floor, hatch shut, then the bakery counter with its stamped loaves, then a view down a narrow stair that I know in my knees leads to water. The reed tickles my wrist like an impatient tutor, so I take it too, and the rope loops itself loosely at my waist, companionable as a belt. A panel slides in the far wall, revealing a low passage painted with bees that seem to lean toward me. I keep my eyes forward and walk, the floor under my feet shaped into a shallow trough, the stone cool enough to quiet my pulse. We open into a chamber round as a coin where 7 tiny fountains spit thin threads into a common basin. Each thread steady as a metronome and each stamped at its base with one of the household symbols: key, rope, amphorae, wave, laurel, bread, mainstream history note to pin the moment. Aqueduct-fed houses often used lead or terracotta pipes with clever pressure balancing to feed multiple outlets. Some even had constant flow taps, but no surviving estate plans show fountains tuned to different rhythms. Yet here the threads tick against the water at distinct intervals, a pattern I can almost count: 90 heartbeats for the rope, 70 for bread, 100 for the wave. As if the city is running 7 clocks in the same bowl. The mirror in my hand brightens and shows the basin from above, its surface a subtle grid, and with the reed I lightly touch the squares. Where the threads strike, each contact sends a ripple racing toward the center, where they overlap and form a momentary picture. The laurel house, then the granary door, then the boundary stones blinking silver, tiny omens that vanish before I can decide if they are helpful. The rope tightens at my waist. Not unfriendly, and I understand it would like to leave. We take a side slit barely wide enough for my shoulders and travel along a corridor cut so clean the stone feels poured. Midway, a cool draft smells of sea and smoke, and my memory tags the drowned port I have not reached yet but know I will. The passage blooms into an antechamber with a floor mosaic like a compass rose. The north point is marked with a lichus, the curved staff of an augur, and the tiles shimmer as if the curve were wet. Mainstream fact: augurs watch the sky's birds to read the god's will, delineating sacred space with that staff. But scholars still argue whether their observations were strictly ritual or had pragmatic scheduling value. If you watch for flocks, you also learn wind and weather, even if you call it omens. Open debate framed. I stand on the lichus point and the rope gives a courteous tug toward east where the emblem is a bread stamp, then south where a tiny bull prances in black stone, Mithras peeking through the cracks of public decor, then west where a coin glints, too literal by half. I choose east first and pass through a bee-curtained threshold into a storeroom whose amphorae look drier tonight. Almost embarrassed about yesterday's sweating episode. Thank you for the skincare routine. I brush the nearest and it does not ooze progress, and from the far wall a line of small bronze plates clicks outward one by one, each engraved with a neighbor word: return, borrowed, count, forward. I open, night, 7, yes, yes. I hear you whispering in punctuation. I pocket nothing, temptation is still a sport, but I would like to keep my score low. The rope steers me back to the compass room and insists on south. So I drop under a low arch into a passage where the air turns colder and the walls flare with painted torches that give no heat. Fringe cork to log with a straight face. One flame leans to lick the paint of another and leaves a soot mark on plaster that refuses all logic. I continue until the bull relief breathes the tiniest frost and then stops. A line on the floor marks a circle I know by now is a firm no or a careful please. I decline the invitation and return west. The coin point's door opens to a narrow loggia hanging over a different forum than the one I met first, smaller, intimate. The sundial here is intact, and yet its shadow performs a slow theatrical bow toward evening, a kindness after so many refusals. I watch it for 5 long breaths and it moves a hair, which means something in this place has loosened, maybe me, maybe the world. Light joke too. If the city would like to reset my circadian rhythm, please submit a request in triplicate. I re-enter the Laurel House to find the basalt table licking its channels with a new thread. The letters now form a tidy exit, which is considerate, and then they rearrange into a street name I cannot translate, which is less so. The rope hums at my waist, the bronze eye cools, the dormant seed in my pocket ticks once like a pebble in a glass, and I feel it, the night stepping forward by an invisible notch. The house slipping its lesson neatly into the stack of things I am supposed to remember. I take one last look up through the skylight at the bronze sky that pretends nothing ever changes, and tell it gently that we both know better now. The shadow that nodded earlier does not reappear, but as I leave the laurel threshold, a faint breeze moves the bee curtain in a slow, approving wave, and down in the square outside the 7 little fountains alter their beat by a fraction, aligning on the same first strike, as if the clocks agree for once, which would be a lovely omen if omens paid rent. We follow the curb of the street until it spills us into a lane where the paving stones wear a faint inlaid path like the atrium mosaics. Handwriting, it leads me toward the sound I keep pretending I can ignore. The rope wheel steady again, none of yesterday's hesitation, and somewhere ahead something is lowering or lifting with the patience of a city that counts only forward and expects me to keep up. The lane narrows until the walls brush my elbows, the inlaid path underfoot glowing faintly as if to remind me where my attention should be. The rope wheel's cadence is steady now, each turn slow but deliberate. The air smells faintly of damp lime and fennel, with a low undercurrent of something metallic like bronze shavings. I follow the curve until the path spills me into a small courtyard enclosed on all sides by high walls. The only opening's a narrow archway behind me, and a circular oculus high above that pours in the fixed bronze light. In the center of the courtyard is a stone platform waist-high, its surface a mosaic depicting the same 7 symbols I have seen carved and stamped throughout the city. Key, rope, amphorae, wave, laurel, bread, eye, arranged in a ring, mainstream fact surfaces. In Roman religion, the number 7 often carried layered significance, tied to planetary deities and ritual cycles, but here it feels more like the city's own vocabulary. Fringe theories suggest that arranging symbols in a closed circle was a way to bind their meanings together, keeping them in perpetual conversation. I circle the platform, noticing that each symbol's tile is slightly raised, almost like a pressure plate. The rope slithers from the archway and coils at the symbol of the amphorae, giving a faint tug as if to say start. Here I step onto it and the mosaic warms underfoot, a deep hum vibrating through the platform. A section of wall to my left slides down to reveal a shallow alcove holding a single amphorae, sealed with wax, sweating that same not water I have encountered before. I touch the wax and it pulses once. The rope shifts to the symbol of the bread, so I cross the platform and step there. The hum changes pitch and another wall section opens, this time to reveal a stone shelf with a loaf stamped with the eye mark. The crust warm though the air around it is cool. I continue in the rope's indicated order: wave, laurel, key, eye, and finally rope itself, each step unveiling a new alcove, each containing an object I have seen somewhere else in the city, now gathered here like pieces of a private collection. When the final alcove opens, it holds a coil of rope tied in a sailor's knot, identical to the one I avoided untying in the amphitheater gallery. As the last reveal clicks into place, the hum resolves into a slow rhythm like the beat of an oar in water. The platform's center tile sinks to reveal a shallow bronze bowl filled with still liquid. I kneel and peer into it. The surface stirs, showing me the laurel-marked roof from above, then flashing to the granary, the boundary stones, and the arena floor. The hatch open with nothing inside. The image fades and the bowl's liquid drains away, leaving only the bronze surface etched with the numeral 7. The rope curls back toward the archway, and as I follow it out, I notice that the alcoves have all closed again. The objects hidden from sight, as if they were never meant to be taken, only acknowledged. The courtyard empties into a side street I have not walked before, its paving stones marked with faint, circular stains like the ghosts of old fires. And ahead, carried on the still air, is the sound of the rope wheel turning faster. The circular stains on the paving stones grow darker as I walk, as though I am passing through the memory of old fires that once burned here. The air carries a faint tang of ash mixed with fennel and something sharper, like vinegar. The rope wheel's turning is quicker now, each click of its unseen mechanism echoing along the narrow street. I follow a gentle curve until the lane empties into a rectangular court surrounded by columns, each column's base carved with a different variation of the numeral 7. Some straight, some curling like vines. Mainstream fact tethers me. The Romans loved numerical repetition in architecture, using it both as ornament and as coded reference to events or patrons. But the variations here feel intentional in another way. Fringe speculation suggests that when numerals were altered into organic forms, they doubled as glyphs, each curl or notch carrying a layered meaning. The rope slides toward the far end of the court, where a raised platform holds a massive wooden frame, its top crossbar set with pulleys. The rope wheels sound loudest here. I look up to see a thick line passing through the pulleys, disappearing into a square opening in the bronze-colored sky. The other end descends into the shadowed depths of the frame. I step closer and find a shallow pit beneath the frame, its bottom covered in fine sand marked by concentric circles. The same pattern the cylinder left in the arena. As I watch, the rope twitches and begins to lift something from below, slow and deliberate, the sand shifting as a dark form rises. A sealed chest of bronze bound with 3 bands, each engraved with one of the city's 7 symbols. The chest halts at waist height, suspended in the frame, the rope swaying gently as though pleased with its delivery. I reach out but stop just short, the bronze eye in my pocket humming faintly, the golden grain warm, the dormant grain cold. I step around the chest, noting a small bronze plate set into its back, engraved with a palm-shaped depression. I place the warm grain into it and the bands emit a low, resonant tone, one after another, until all 3 are vibrating in harmony. The chest's lid shifts slightly, releasing a faint scent of salt and oil. I lift it and inside is not treasure but an arrangement of objects. Half a loaf with the eye stamp, a coiled length of rope, a small amphora sealed with wax, and a bronze mirror the size of my palm, each object nested in a fitted recess. I take the mirror and it immediately clouds, then clears to show the boundary stones blinking in sequence before going dark again. I return it to its recess and the rope begins to lower the chest back into the sand, the lid closing without my help, the bands hum fading to silence. The pit swallows the chest, the circles in the sand smoothing themselves as though nothing had disturbed them. The rope slips free of the pulleys and coils at my feet, waiting for me to follow as the court's shadow stretches unnaturally toward a narrow passage where the air feels charged, as if the city is holding its breath. The narrow passage ahead feels alive with static, each step sending a faint prickle up my arms as if the stone itself were holding some quiet charge. The rope glides ahead, its coils skimming the ground without a sound, drawing me toward a low arch at the far end. The arch is carved with 2 bees facing each other, their wings curling into the shapes of laurel leaves. Mainstream fact settles in. Bees were not uncommon in Roman decorative motifs, often tied to industry, community, or certain deities like Artemis or Cybele, yet here their wings are shaped into a symbol I have seen only in the laurel-marked house, Fringe interpretations suggest such hybrid motifs acted as a kind of password in architectural form, visible only to those who had already learned the code elsewhere. I duck through the arch and enter a circular chamber dimly lit by 3 hanging oil lamps. The floor is covered with a mosaic of overlapping circles, each circle containing one of the 7 city symbols, but here they are not evenly spaced. Instead, they cluster toward the center where a shallow bronze basin sits on a low pedestal. The rope slides to the basin and coils beside it. I kneel and peer in, expecting water, but find fine golden sand, smooth as silk. I brush a fingertip across it and the grains shift to reveal a carved numeral 7 beneath. The golden grain in my pocket heats instantly, the dormant grain chilling further. I place the warm seed into the basin and the sand stirs on its own, swirling outward in tight spirals before flowing into the mosaic lines. The patterns on the floor begin to glow faintly, each symbol lighting in sequence: key, amphorae, rope, wave, bread, laurel, eye, until all are illuminated. The bronze eye in my pocket hums low. The rope lifts itself and loops once around the pedestal as if fastening the basin to the chamber. The glowing patterns converge toward a point in the wall, where a panel slides open to reveal a narrow stair descending into a darkness with no scent and no sound. I follow, the air cooling rapidly, until the steps level out into a small vault. The walls lined with tall niches holding slender amphorae sealed with black wax, each amphora marked only with the numeral 7. I lift one and it is heavier than it looks, the wax warm to the touch. I set it back and notice the far wall bears a shallow relief of the arena floor, complete with the central hatch, but here the hatch is open, and from it a thin bronze line runs down the wall into the floor, disappearing toward the basin above. The rope waits by the stair, still as a coiled spring, and I understand that whatever this chamber feeds, it does so without pause, a quiet circuit running beneath the city, one more part of a mechanism I am only beginning to see in full. The corridor up breathes a warmer draft that tastes faintly of fennel and lamp oil, and the rope at my side drifts with the confidence of something that has already memorized the plan of the streets. It noses me into a lane where mica freckles the paving like shallow water that forgot to move. The walls were small household scenes, hands kneading dough, a child turning a water wheel, a woman lifting a lamp toward a shelf, and every panel tucks a tiny eye in one corner as if the house itself is practicing to be a witness. Mainstream fact steadies me. Domestic wall painting in Roman towns loved these vignettes of daily plenty, the kind that turn a kitchen into a promise. Fringe stories add that some painters slipped protective eyes into margins to keep the hunger of passers-by from entering. I pass under a lintel marked with a laurel stamp and catch a smell that should not exist here. Bread warm from no oven. The rope brushes my wrist. A polite cue, and I cross to a portico where a canal runs at ankle height, surface flat as a mirror. A coin rides there and then slides against the flow because the water is going uphill. Yes, a neat Roman trick, hidden gradient, siphon pressure, a clever fall beyond sight. But the mirror gives me the arena for a heartbeat. Hatch shut, sand smooth. Then my face with another face just behind, nodding the same moth wing nod I met in the bowl below. I do not turn. I move along the quay to a bronze mirror on a swivel that blinks a pattern. 3 quick, 1 long, 7 quick, then settles on my reflection alone. Light joke one to keep the shoulders low. I pretend it is complimenting my hair. The rope leads me through a doorway where the floor is a black and white wave that pretends to be rope underfoot. Hooks hang from beams shaped like question marks, each with a ring cut into 7 tiny teeth like keys. The rope threads one ring and drops it, and it lands without sound, which has become a theme. The corridor bends and counts itself in plaques, 1 through 7 and around again, until a small garden opens a step below the street. Shrubs clipped in laurel circles. In the wall, a tiny apotropaic bull peeks from a niche. A whisper of Mithras. Mainstream anchor. Those bull reliefs rode far on the empire's roads, soldiers carrying them like pocket altars. Historians still debate how public those mysteries ever were, temple or clubhouse, theology or supper club. I step on and the rope guides me into a narrow workroom under a modest roof. Pulleys run into the walls, oiled and idle. A clepsydra squats on a bench with a winter-heavy plate like the ones museums love. Roman water clocks told unequal hours engraved to fit the season, and scholars still quarrel over whether houses truly used them beyond display. Fringe murmurs claim some families tuned them to ritual beats. I tap the rim and one drop falls as if on cue. A panel in the farther wall slides aside and gives me a rectangular basin whose surface behaves like paper. A pointer mounted above traces letters in the water without making a ripple. V, then I, then another I for habit's sake, and the letters fade at exactly the pace of a long breath. The rope hums, not impatient, just present. Out the side the canal obligingly lifts a thread of water to wet a reed lying on a crate with its lid pried. Service with discretion. Light joke too. I write a single 7 on the wood and the quay mirror throws one long blink as if filing the receipt. The rope ties itself into a sailor's knot around a post and unties again to show off. Somewhere a pulley answers with a soft, proud sigh. We pass bronze plates inset into the pavement engraved with the 7 house signs. Key, rope, amphorae, wave, laurel. Bread, I, and when I press them in a simple order the plates hum up a scale. A door unlatches, and a stair rises whose walls are scored with tallies grouped by 7. At each landing sits a small offering, a heel of bread cooling toward stone, a cup of black syrupy ink that refuses to drip, a laurel leaf that will not dry, mainstream aside to ground the stomach, the Annona, Rome's grain dole, fed citizens and politics both. Measured, stamped, tallied until hunger took on paperwork. Historians still debate whether provincial towns copied the capital closely or improvised regional systems. The ink cup does not care about the footnotes. We exit into a cloister square paved in circles like the arena's gentle instructions. At the center, a low pillar offers a palm-shaped hollow. I set the bronze eye and a side door opens with a domestic click. Inside a reading room keeps its shelves and a lamp that glows without flame. The floor shows a small city reduced to one alley bending left into a square. I blink and the alley bends right. Patient tutor. I touch the tile stamped with laurel and feel a small key. Under my fingers I did not see. When I lift it the fountains in the outer court alter their beat by a hair and then agree on the same first drop. Like clocks that decided to be kind, the rope brushes my wrist. Good, and off we go into a service lane that smells of flour and cold ash. Past ovens whose mouths reflect rooms I am not in. Down to a lower quay where the air tastes like tide even though the drowned port sits beyond the wall. Engineers will explain with culverts hidden in foundation, and I nod because that is the sensible answer while the mirror water keeps showing me rooms I have not reached. Which is less so, the rope dips into a slit drain and somewhere a long line seems to pay out an answer. We climb back to a square I do not know where a wooden frame carries a thick line into the bronze sky. The wheel turns with careful confidence. Sand beneath traced in concentric rings. A chest rises bound in 3 bands engraved wave laurel I. At my ribs it halts. I find the familiar palm. Seat the warm grain. And the bands answer in a chord you feel more than hear. Inside, a coil of rope, a half loaf with the stamp, a small sealed amphorae, a palm mirror. I return them to their neat beds. The chest descends, sand smooths itself like a cat. The rope slips from the pulleys and coils at my feet. We move again to a compass rose of black stone. North marked with a bright lituous, mainstream reminder. Augurs shaped attention by cutting sky. Into lawful quarters, scholars still debate whether that was meteorology in costume or ritual grammar all the way down. The rope tugs east to a loaf tile, south to a tiny bowl. West to a coin that winks. I take east first and circle a pantry that has stopped sweating. Progress, and a line of small plates clicks from a wall one by one to offer neighbor words. Return, borrowed, count, forward, I, open, night, 7. Yes, yes, punctuation accepted. The rope is pleased enough to warm against my wrist, and when I return to the laurel roof, the basalt table is writing with a hairline thread again. Exit first as a courtesy. Then a street name my mouth knows before my mind does. The bronze eye cools in my pocket. The dormant seed ticks once like a pebble in a glass. And the whole house relaxes the way a tutor does after the last slate problem finally turns correct. Outside, the 7 little fountains keep their accord, and the wheel I cannot see resumes its punctual turn. Counting a night I cannot add back, polite as ever, sure of its cue. The path the table names carries me past the forum sundial that refuses labor and into the pale reach of the boundary stones. Waist-high markers banded with faint tool marks, their tops flicking silver. I set my palm to one and the low note wakes again. Not loud, just a presence asking inside or outside. Mainstream reminder to steady the head. The sacred pomerium was a legal and ritual border. Emperors like to boast of stretching it. Archaeology keeps quibbling about how far and when. Fringe tales add that some stones walked by a thumb's breadth each night to pen ill luck, which is charming until one hums under your hand in daylight. I climb the short stair to the augur's platform over a cramped square, expecting no motion, and for once a bird crosses. One clean stroke of wing and vanishes where there is no gap. I laugh despite myself, the kind of museum whisper laugh you hope no one hears. Light joke 3, the lichus carved on the floor. Brightens anyway, permission or warning I cannot tell. And the rope taps twice against my wrist to keep me moving. The fountains at the far edge of hearing change their beat by a hair and then resolve on the same first drop. As if the clocks have agreed for now, which feels less like kindness than a cue. So I follow the lane the water wrote, past shutters that inhale but do not open. Past Alara's niche still damp with wine. Toward a low door with bees and laurel and the faintest outline of a key. The lock yields without resistance. The room keeps only a lamp and a wax tablet. I lift the stylus and the wax writes beneath it. 7 nights count only forward. It adds, return the borrowed eye, and then, after a long heartbeat in which the walls seem to listen, feed only what you can spare, the rope loosens at my wrist. Just enough to let me understand the decision is mine, and somewhere above, patient as ever, the wheel continues to turn. The rope lingers at my wrist like it wants to make sure I have read the wax tablet's message enough times to feel it in my bones. Then releases with the sort of reluctance you usually get from a cat vacating a warm windowsill. I tuck the tablet back onto the low shelf and the lamp above it flickers once as if marking the moment. The room's only door opens without my help into a side lane so narrow my shoulders almost brush both walls. The air here is cooler, laced with the faint smell of wet stone and something metallic, the kind of tang you would expect from a coin just pulled from a fountain. Mainstream fact slides into place. Roman alleyways often acted as drainage paths in heavy rains. The paving slightly tilted to guide water toward grates, but fringe accounts claim certain alleys, doubled as ritual corridors, their sloping floors leading to hidden basins where offerings were washed clean before being presented. The rope guides me to such a grate now, its iron bars worked into a subtle pattern of laurel leaves and tiny eyes. Peering down, I see a shallow channel with water moving the wrong way. Upstream, its surface shining like oiled bronze. The golden grain in my pocket grows warmer, the dormant one colder. I kneel and the rope dips its tip through the grate, sending a ripple against the current. The water responds with a swirl that shapes itself into a crude numeral 7 before smoothing out again. A low hum follows, not from the water but from beneath the stones under my knees. I rise and follow the rope into a courtyard hemmed in by high walls painted with faded murals of harvest scenes. Every sheaf of grain topped with a tiny carved eye. The center of the courtyard holds a circular stone well capped by a bronze lid engraved with the 7 house symbols. I press the laurel first, then the bread, then the rope, each click answered by a shifting weight beneath my feet. When the final symbol is pressed, the lid slides aside to reveal a deep shaft lit from below by an amber glow. A narrow stair winds down along the wall, the rope gliding ahead, the air thickening with the scent of fennel and smoke the deeper we go. At the bottom I find a circular chamber whose floor is a single bronze disc etched with the arena's concentric rings. The disc is warm underfoot, vibrating faintly. In the center sits a low pedestal with a palm-shaped hollow. I place the warm grain into it and the vibration intensifies. A section of the wall sliding open to reveal a hidden alcove holding 3 objects: a small amphorae, a folded laurel wreath, and a bronze mirror. I lift the mirror and it clouds instantly, clearing to show the arena hatch half open, the sand undisturbed, then flashing to the laurel-marked roof, the boundary stones, and finally the rope while turning slowly. The image fades and the mirror cools in my hand. I return it to the alcove, retrieve the grain, and the wall closes as silently as it opened. The rope leads me back up the stair, the bronze lid sliding shut behind us, sealing the well from sight, the hum underfoot lingering a moment longer before fading away into the stillness of the courtyard. The courtyard exhales a faint warmth as I step away from the sealed well, the harvest murals watching with patient eyes carved into every sheaf. The rope glides toward a narrow door in the far wall, its frame dark with age and carved at the lintel with a small palm. I push it open and find a covered walkway that smells faintly of beeswax and cool stone. The ceiling painted with a pattern of interlocking circles. Mainstream fact slips in. This design, often called galoche, was common in Roman mosaics and fresco borders, symbolizing infinity or the unbroken order of the cosmos. Fringe speculation adds that when placed overhead it was meant to disorient those beneath, making them feel both enclosed and adrift. The rope seems unaffected, tugging me forward until the walkway opens into a long rectangular hall lined with shelves, each shelf holding a single sealed clay jar marked only with the numeral 7. I pass them without touching, my footsteps echoing softly, and at the far end a low platform waits. Its surface a mosaic map of the city, but here the streets are simplified, only 7 routes shown, each marked at its end by one of the house symbols. I kneel to study it, and the bronze eye in my pocket hums faintly, the golden grain warm, the dormant grain cold. I place the active grain on the laurel route and the tile beneath sinks slightly, the entire mosaic map glowing as if lit from below. The rope slides to the bread route. I repeat the action and the glow deepens. The remaining routes, rope, amphorae, wave, key, eye, are pressed in turn, each triggering a low chord that blends into a single resonant hum. The air shifts and a section of wall beside the map opens to reveal a descending stair. I follow into a circular chamber whose floor is divided into 7 wedges of polished stone, each inlaid with one of the house symbols. In the center stands a shallow bronze bowl filled with perfectly still water. I lean over it and the surface ripples without my touch, showing the laurel-marked roof from above. Then the granary, then the arena floor with its hatch closed. The image shifts once more to a dimly lit corridor where the rope will turns in slow, deliberate rotations. The water stills and the rope at my side gives a gentle tug toward a narrow passage opposite the stair. I follow it into a tight corridor that bends twice before opening into a small chamber, the walls covered in faint inscriptions too worn to read. In the center, a pedestal holds a sealed amphorae, its wax warm to the touch. I lift it and a low hum starts beneath the floor, steady as a heartbeat. The rope coils at my feet, then turns toward the exit, leading me back through the narrow bends until we emerge once more into the Hall of Jars, the hum fading behind us as the door to the hidden stair closes without a sound. The Hall of Jars feels quieter now, as if the air has been pressed flat. The rope glides along the shelves without pause, each sealed jar identical in size and mark. their uniformity making them seem less like containers and more like members of a silent assembly. We reach the far end where a door of dark wood is bound with 3 bronze bands engraved with the laurel, the eye, and the rope symbols. Mainstream fact steadies me. In Roman domestic architecture, certain storerooms were locked with complex metalwork, not just for security but as status display. Fringe theories suggest some were arranged to be opened only in the presence of specific ritual objects. The bronze eye in my pocket hums in quiet agreement. I press it against the laurel band and the wood shivers faintly. Then I touch the warm grain to the eye band, and finally the dormant grain to the rope band, each contact answered by a muted click. The door swings inward to reveal a narrow spiral stair descending into a cooler space. The steps worn smooth, the air carrying a mineral tang like water running over bronze. At the bottom lies a circular chamber with 7 alcoves evenly spaced around the wall. Each alcove holding a different object: rope coil, amphorae, loaf, laurel wreath, small bronze key, clay jar, and bronze mirror, arranged on pedestals of black basalt. In the center of the floor is a mosaic of concentric circles like the arena's sand pattern. But here the rings are broken at 7 points, each aligned with one of the alcoves. The rope moves to the amphorae alcove. I follow and lift the vessel. Its wax seal warm, a thin thread of liquid humming inside. I set it back and the broken ring nearest it glows briefly. The rope then guides me through the rest, touching or lifting each item until all 7 breaks glow in turn. When the final one lights, the central circles fill with a soft golden glow that spreads to the walls, revealing inscriptions above each alcove. Short phrases in Latin that seem to be fragments of a larger sentence. I can only make out parts: count forward, return, spare. 7 nights. The rope coils at my feet and the glow fades, the alcove objects returning to stillness. A low grinding sound begins as a section of the floor at the edge of the chamber slides back, revealing a sloping passage that disappears into shadow. I follow, the slope gentle, the walls narrowing until I have to angle my shoulders. The air here warmer, scented faintly with fennel and smoke. At the end a small bronze door waits, unmarked but for a shallow palm shape. I press the warm grain into it and it clicks open to reveal a narrow quay overlooking a channel of perfectly still water. The rope slips into it without a splash, the surface barely rippling as it drifts ahead, leading me toward an arch where the faint sound of the rope will turning grows clearer with each step. The quay's stone edge is damp beneath my palms as I crouch to test the channel's surface. The water cooler than I expect and carrying the faint taste of bronze. The rope drifts ahead, its coils skimming without disturbing more than a few widening rings. The arch we approach is low, its keystone carved with the numeral 7 flanked by 2 tiny bees. Mainstream fact steadies me. Roman aqueduct systems sometimes carried markings to indicate inspection points or maintenance entries, though here the motif feels less like civic utility and more like a private signature. Fringe speculation claims that bees marked spaces connected to hidden treasuries or ritual storerooms. I duck under the arch and the ceiling lowers further until it nearly grazes my head. The rope slips through like smoke, and the tunnel begins to widen until it becomes a round basin room. The water lapping quietly against stone ledges circling the chamber. 7 bronze spouts protrude evenly from the wall, each stamped with one of the household symbols, thin threads of water falling from them in uneven rhythms. The rope loops itself neatly on the ledge beneath the bread spout and I kneel to catch a drop in my palm. It is warm, almost the temperature of breath. The golden grain in my pocket pulses with heat. The dormant grain colder still. I dip the warm one into the basin and the spouts shift their rhythm until all 7 streams strike the water. At the same time, the ripples meet in the center and rise into a faint dome before collapsing, revealing for an instant a vision on the surface, the arena floor with its hatch ajar, the laurel-marked roof glowing faintly, the granary door sealed, and the rope will turning in deliberate measure. The image fades, the water returning to stillness. The rope glides toward a narrow landing on the opposite side of the chamber. A stair climbing steeply into dim light, each step damp underfoot. The air smelling faintly of fennel and charred wood. I emerge into a small walled garden open to the bronze-colored sky. At its center a sundial stands, its gnomon casting no shadow. Mainstream fact threads in. Some Roman sundials were adjusted to local latitude with precision, yet here its refusal to mark time feels intentional. Historians still debate whether certain ceremonial dials were designed to remain fixed as a statement that ritual hours, not solar hours, govern the space. The rope rests beside the sundial's base where the 7 symbols are carved in a ring. I press each in order and a section of the garden wall swings outward, revealing a street I have not walked before, its paving stones inlaid with a subtle laurel pattern leading away toward the faint hum of the rope wheel. Faster now, each turn like a clock drawing closer to the hour it has been waiting for. The laurel pattern street guides me like a hand at my elbow. The rope wheels hum ahead, tightening into a steady syllable that repeats until my body starts matching it. The air cooling as the buildings lean in and the bronze sky thins to a ribbon. I pass shutters pinned open by small bronze bees and a niche where Alara's pair keeps watch over a saucer of wine that never dries, a reminder that this city prefers its offerings evergreen. The paving shifts under my shoes from neat squares to long black strips that gleam as if oiled, and when I look back the sheen has already dulled as though it only wanted to be seen once. The rope glides beside my ankle and flicks toward a narrow arch, its keystone cut with the eye that has followed me since the first gate. Inside the light falls shallow and patient, picking out a corridor whose walls carry faint diagrams scratched by a careful hand. Circles overlaid on street plans, 7 pointed wheels, tiny arrows, mainstream fact to calm my pulse slips in. Roman surveyors laid out towns with a decumanus and cardo. East-west and north-south, fixed by the Groma's cross and simple sun work, a discipline that made ports and markets and forums rhyme across a whole empire, and yet these marks glide around the grid, like fish in a channel, arranging routes into rings and spirals as if the city had been tuned after the fact. Fringe detail sidles up, the idea that some households borrowed the auger's sky-cutting logic and tried it on streets, remapping thresholds as if they were constellations. I smile because the sensible part of my brain is filing a complaint while the rest nods along. Light joke one to keep the shoulders from climbing. Somewhere a civil engineer just felt a chill and does not know why. The corridor releases me into a low square where 7 thin pillars hold up a roof painted with sea waves. Each pillar foot-bound in a bronze band stamped with one of the house symbols. The rope drifts to the band marked with wave, taps it once, and a panel in the floor size back to reveal a waist-deep basin whose water sits wrong, surface flat and glassy, cool without scent. When I touch it, the ripple moves in a straight line rather than a circle, belining toward a slot cut beneath the opposite pillar, where it vanishes with a tiny click that sounds like approval. The rope leads me onward into a workroom arranged like a decisive mind, shelves labeled in a tidy hand. Cordage, wax, tablets, oil, and in the center a black basalt table cut with channels that I cannot not read as streets. A little clepsydra sits on one corner, and this one is honest. A narrow thread drips from a pierced bronze into a catching bowl engraved with seasonal hours. Mainstream anchor to fix the hours. Water clocks in Rome made the day elastic, winter hours longer at night, summer hours longer by day. Scholars still quarrel over how widely domestic ones were used versus the big public pieces, but here the plate is worn by real fingers. The rope rolls the smallest coil across the table until it bumps a palm-shaped depression. I set the warm grain there and the channels wake. A hairline of liquid slides from nowhere, tracing the forum square, the amphitheater oval, then bending to a roof stamped on the surface with a laurel. The line pauses, brightens, and a shutter behind me opens of its own polite will, admitting a single clean trumpet of outside air, fennel and oil and a sweetness like figs left near a window. I follow the breeze into a stair that curls softer than any the arena granted me. The steps cupped as if dozens of previous pairs of feet shared my load. The hum climbs with me and then grows shy as I emerge into a long peristyle that has been dressed for company. Hedge forms cut into knotwork, a fountain that pours without spending itself, birds cast in bronze but hung as if about to shift perches. I cross to the far side where the paving becomes a faintly inlaid map again, only this one is not of streets but of small objects. A mirror, an amphorae, a coil, a key, a loaf, a wreath, an eye, all in the same sevenfold grammar. I step on the mirror and the bronze eye in my pocket approves with a low hum. The loaf lights next, then the key, and as the sequence completes, a modest door slides aside to show a study that looks so normal it makes the hair on my arms rise. Good wood, a chair that would save your back, neat piles of tablets, a lamp that glows without flame. The window shows not the garden but a tight view of boundary stones blinking silver as if sunlight found them in a city that refuses the sun. I stand at the desk because the room feels like it needs witness and read the top tablet, written in a careful, legible hand, tally, guests unnamed, bread for 7. Water uphill, night count forward only, return borrowed eye at first light. The last line is cut deeper, as if the stylus leaned when the hand it belonged to grew tired. An open debate lifts its head in mine. Historians still wrestle with what a household cult meant in practice, whether Lararia were for ancestors, for city gods in miniature, or for private devotions that borrowed public forms. Inscriptions boast but bones are quiet. And the archaeology says yes and also yes. The city here votes for yes in every direction. A wag of its many little heads. The rope taps my ankle and I understand it wants me to see one more thing before the hour tips. So I pocket the tablet long enough to feel its weight and set it down again where it belongs. The house thanks me by letting a panel open near the floor, admitting a draft that smells like the drowned port I have not reached. Tar and salt and rope. I kneel and look through and find a slot just large enough for a hand. The stone around it polished by cautious fingers. I reach in and touch a bronze disc that loosens with a soft swear of metal. When I draw it out, the disc is stamped with a tiny calendar, fasti in miniature, days scored with letters, good for public business, bad for it. Half and half, and a scratch where an unknown hand has underlined a run of 7 that start with yesterday. A mainstream reminder hums that Roman calendars were messy in the best of times, with market days woven through civic feasts and imperial birthdays gilded, and a fringe whisper answers that some towns doctored their walls to skip a day when omens soured, which respectable minds dismiss. But our square has been telling me jokes in a straight voice for days. So I hold both in one palm, light joke too. If the city is hiding Tuesdays, I will forgive it provided it keeps Mondays. The rope forgives the joke and leads me out to a balcony where the bronze light passes like a hand smoothing a blanket. From here, the auger platform is a neat chip of stone and the boundary line a chalk-bright smile. And in the quiet, the wheel finally lets me hear its exact heart. A click that counts and a sigh that resets. The balcony rail is carved with little I's and B's that should be decorative but read like instructions by now. And at the end where the rail turns, I find a short string tied in a simple sailor's knot, the same pattern I refused in the galleries on principle. I close a finger under the knot and the rope beside my ankle tightens in solidarity before gently easing. Permission to try. I pull and a shutter in the plaza below flips like a fish, spilling light onto a door whose lintel wears both laurel and key. The hum climbs an inch and the street below answers with a very quiet tilt, like a fabric pulled smooth. I take the stair down and the city allows me to arrive in a breath. The door opens to a narrow hall that has only ever wanted to be walked, and in the center of its floor a bronze bowl waits with its skin much too still. I hold the warm seed above it and the dormant seed on my other palm a shade away. And the bowl decides it is a mirror, shows me the arena hatch, the cylinder gone, the sand scored with a neat 7 at center, then drags the image sideways to the laurel roof where the basalt channels have written exit again, and then, only for a blink, the drowned port keys where we'd fingers point upstream. The bowl lets go and goes back to being a bowl. And the rope tugs me toward the exit like a kindly usher. I pass the fountain that will not spend itself, and the hedge that will not grow, and the bees that refuse to be purely bees. Back into the laurel street whose inlay now reads like the bass line of a song, the hum of the wheel swelling until even the shutters breathe in time. Light joke 3 to keep the breathing easy. If a metronome ever learns Latin, I will have to tip it. The boundary stones blink once more as I cross their sight, and the auger platform holds still as a held breath. The sundial at the little garden keeps its stubborn noon, and the path settles its ribbon under my shoes without complaint. The hour sits down where it belongs inside the wheel, and the city shaves. Another notch off the 7 I do not get to claw back, polite as ever, certain of its arithmetic, waiting for me to show I can count too. The laurel-patterned ribbon of street feels different, underfoot now, as if each step is sliding into a groove worn by someone else long before me. The rope moves with quiet assurance, taking me toward a low arch whose keystone carries a shallow engraving of a palm. Cradling an eye, mainstream fact steadies me. Roman threshold carvings sometimes marked ownership or patronage, but this pairing of symbols has no obvious civic purpose. Fringe theories suggest it was a way to indicate a place where watchers were welcomed, and perhaps where watchers watched in return. I duck beneath into a passage dimly lit by oil lamps shaped like amphorae, their wicks burning without visible fuel. The air here smells faintly of fennel and warm metal, and the walls are painted with alternating panels of the city's 7 household symbols, each framed in rope patterns so detailed they almost seem woven. The rope coils briefly around my ankle before gliding ahead, guiding me into a circular chamber where the floor is a bronze disc engraved with concentric rings like the arena. Only here the rings are intersected by 7 spokes, each spoke ending at a pedestal holding an object: a loaf, a laurel wreath, a bronze key, a rope coil, an amphorae, a mirror, and a small clay jar sealed with wax. The golden grain in my pocket grows warm, the dormant one cold. I step onto the spoke leading to the amphorae, and the floor vibrates faintly beneath me. A tone sounding from somewhere deep below. I touch the vessel and the tone changes pitch. The rope then guides me to the next spoke, each object responding in turn until all 7 have been touched. When the last tone fades, the bronze disc at the center of the floor slides aside, revealing a shallow recess filled with perfectly still black water. I kneel and peer in, the surface clouding before clearing to show the rope while turning faster than before, its motion accompanied by a faint ticking. The image shifts to the laurel-marked roof, the granary, and finally the arena floor, the hatch sealed but the sand marked with a single 7. The water stills and the bronze disc rises to cover it again, sealing the vision away. The rope leads me to a narrow side door I had not noticed, its frame carved with bees and laurel. Beyond it, a stair descends into a long gallery lined with shelves holding small bronze tablets, each etched with rows of numerals, some complete, others abruptly ending. I run my finger along one and it hums softly, as if recognizing my touch. The rope moves to the far end of the gallery, where a single tablet rests on a pedestal, its numerals freshly cut, the final line reading only 6. The dash hanging open like an unfinished thought. I glance at the rope, but it remains still, as though waiting for me to supply the ending. Yet when I reach for the stylus lying beside the tablet, a faint sound from above interrupts. 3 measured turns of the wheel followed by a pause, then 3 more. The rope coils once around the pedestal and slips toward the stair, its patience thinning. I follow back up into the chamber of spokes, the floor warm under my feet, the air heavier, as if the city has just counted one more beat toward something it refuses to name. The warmth in the chamber clings to me as I leave, the rope guiding me through a narrow doorway into a corridor whose walls are carved with overlapping laurel leaves, their edges sharp enough to catch on my sleeve. The air is still and smells faintly of beeswax and bronze. Mainstream fact steadies my thoughts. Laurel motifs were often used in Roman decoration to signal victory or divine favor, especially in military contexts. But fringe interpretations claim that in domestic settings laurel served as a private sign of endurance, a reminder to those inside that time itself could be outlasted. The rope moves without pause, leading me into a rectangular hall lit by a single slit window high above. The light falls directly onto a black basalt table in the center of the room, its surface engraved with the city's 7 household symbols arranged in a circle. I place my palm on the laurel and feel the golden grain warm further in my pocket, the dormant grain cooling almost to ice. The rope brushes the bread symbol and I follow, touching it to release a faint hum that joins the laurel's tone. One by one we complete the circle: key, rope, amphorae, wave, eye, until the table vibrates under my hand and the air shifts. A section of the far wall swinging inward to reveal a staircase descending into shadow. The rope coils at the threshold as if waiting for my decision. I step down into a low, vaulted chamber whose floor is a shallow pool of clear water, a narrow walkway of stone slabs crossing it to a central pedestal. The pedestal holds a bronze bowl filled with fine sand. In the sand is drawn a perfect 7. I brush my fingers over it and the lines close, the sand smoothing until it is featureless, then rippling outward as though something beneath has stirred. The water around the walkway begins to move in slow spirals, reflecting patterns of light onto the ceiling. The rope rests by my side, silent, as the bronze bowl's sand shifts again to form a map. The arena, the laurel-marked roof, the granary, and a small, unfamiliar square marked only with the eye symbol. The image fades, the sand settling, and I retrieve the warm grain before stepping back onto the walkway, the water still moving but slowing, the chamber returning to its earlier stillness. The rope leads me up the stairs and back into the basalt hall, the wall closing behind us with a sound like a lock being turned. In the dim light, the table's symbols glow faintly for a moment before fading, leaving only the cold stone. The rope pulls gently toward another door on the far side, where the faint hum of the rope will reaches my ears again. Steadier now, each turn deliberate, as if it knows I am coming closer. The door on the far side accepts my hand the way well-trained hinges accept a secret, a soft consenting give that feels less like metal moving and more like a mouth opening to speak. The rope glides across the threshold and I follow into a corridor whose floor has been polished by so many quiet passages that my reflection pools in it, thin and wavering. The air carries that familiar fennel and ink scent with a note of colder stone underneath, and the bronze sky thins above to a slat of light that repeats at intervals like a measured breath. I trail my fingers along the wall and find shallow cuts that resolve into tally marks grouped by 7, the last set stopping at 6 with a patient scratch waiting for its partner. I do not oblige. I have learned to let the city set its own arithmetic. The corridor widens by degrees into a square where a low plinth waits under an oculus. On the plinth, a bronze plaque lies face down, which is either an invitation or a joke. I lift it and the underside shows a map I have not seen. 7 small squares connected by a loop that passes twice through a narrow throat. Each square stamped with one of the house signs. The rope taps my ankle and eases me toward the throat in the floor, a stairwell that smells wet and metallic. I descend along a spiral whose treads are so subtly cupped that the city must have run the same errand for centuries. The hum of the wheel grows clearer, keeping a slow, patient count, and at the bottom I step into a rotunda where 7 niches watch with their usual patience, each holding a familiar object: loaf, key, wreath, amphorae, coil of rope, mirror, clay jar, and in the center a shallow bronze bowl waits on a palm-shaped pedestal, its surface perfectly still until I exhale. Then rippling as if my breath counted, mainstream fact is a quiet anchor in my skull. Romans timed hours not just with sundials but with clepsydry that let water fall into calibrated bowls. Public courts even measured how long a speech could last by drip. Yet here the bowl refuses gravity, holding itself so poised that time seems optional. Fringe detail tugs at the sleeve. A story from an antiquarian footnote about houses that kept listening basins. For the nights when streets were tuned, water that mirrored the city's memory rather than its ceiling. I hover the warm grain above the surface and the bowl brightens from within, forming concentric rings like the arena's sand. Then the image sharpens into the laurel roof's basalt table, its capillaries glowing and spelling out a short line, exit, which the room politely ignores. The rope loops once around the pedestal and points me to the mirror niche. I lift the palm mirror and it declines to show my face, choosing instead a window that should look on a garden but looks on a little forum where a sundial actually moves 1 careful degree. Reassurance that some piece of sky still behaves. Historians still debate whether ritual dials were ever meant to stand outside of time or if reports of fixed shadows were poetic shorthand for civic stubbornness. I hold the argument in one hand and the mirror in the other and let both be true for now. I set the mirror down and the coil of rope gives a cat stretch twitch as if recalling the galleries, the old frayed trap, the gentle pendulum laugh, and for a second the air tastes like pitch and sea wind. My feet remember the drowned port before my mind gets there. The rope at my ankle hums in a note that means come and I obey. The rotunda's far side opens into a passage low and long, its walls set with bronze tabs at hip height stamped with 7s. I touch each as I pass and the tone changes, a scale up the corridor's throat until we arrive at a door kept with 3 bands. Laurel, eye, rope, the same triad that yielded in the storeroom. The bronze eye in my pocket vibrates a little grievance for being made to repeat a trick but presses itself compliant to the laurel. The warm grain kisses the eye, the dormant seed cold as winter meets the rope, and the latch sighs open on a room lit with that low amber I have come to read as permission. Inside a table holds nothing but a wax tablet and a stylus. The wax already scored by a careful hand. Night V counted, 6 in breath, return borrowed eye. The last line cut deeper like a reminder you do not leave on the desk to be missed. The stylus is warm, the habit leaf of a recent note. I set it down without adding a mark and the room rewards me with a sliding panel at my knee that shows not a storage niche but a slit window, right at the waterline of some buried channel. The surface beyond runs uphill again, a Roman trick I can respect even while it misbehaves, and a coin floats by twice because time here prefers loops. I climb back to the rotunda and the rope nudges me to a second door that was not there before, framed in bees that seem to tilt as I tilt. The steps beyond descend to a chamber that could be a dock if you allowed it poetry. A stone ledge, a basin calm as thought, and a frame overhead with a pulley where the wheels sigh fall sigh breath comes from. It lowers nothing yet. Perhaps because I am the delivery today, the basin's water refuses to reflect me until I hold the warm seat above it. Then it offers a quick braid of images, the amphitheater, hatch ajar, polished boards instead of sand. The granary door with its tally marks reset to a raw patient wall, the boundary stones blinking silver in sequence like a slow code. I pocket the grain and the basin stops being helpful. The rope leans my steps toward an archway with a lintel carved into a laurel knot, and the passage past it is wider, paved in black strips that borrow and return light like courteous thieves. The walls hold small reliefs of hands doing ordinary work, pounding grain, knotting rope, tying a child's shoe, and in each corner an eye is cut, not large, not loud, just present. That is the city's humor. The reliefs finish with a rowboat being lifted under a roof, which is not ordinary at all and tells me the drowned port will not wait forever. I turn left where the floor inlays hint and the corridor exhale cools into a niche where a lituus, the curved staff of an augur, is set in bronze against the wall. Mainstream detail to steady breath. Augurs marked sacred space and read the sky's birds with such ceremony that even generals deferred. Whether their craft was pragmatic meteorology or sheer ritual grammar is still argued with love by scholars who enjoy polite combat. The staff here hums under my palm with none of the sky's help, tuned to stones and water rather than wind, and somewhere high as ceiling a single bird passes across a patch of bronze light with a clean, real wing beat, not a mosaic trick. A second's grace that keeps my voice low. The rope urges me on to a stair that opens into a court I do not know, its center occupied by a waist-high frame like the one that fed the bronze chest earlier, its sands combed to blankness as if expecting another delivery. I look up expecting the square opening to the sky and find instead a ceiling of fresh-laid boards, tight-grained and smelling lightly of resin, and an aperture cut with a neat circle where the rope will appear when the wheel has decided I have earned it. The boards tick in the heat the way fresh timber does and then settle, as if the house has pressed its own lips together. A row of small bronze plates along the frame's lower brace click outward and show the city's favorite sentence broken into toys: return, borrowed, count, forward, I, open, night, 7. I say them under my breath because the cadence helps keep the pulse even. And the rope is kind enough not to tug until I have finished the litany. When it does, I follow into a side loggia that hangs over a lane stacked with shutters, the mirrors in their frames catching a grain of light and sending it up to a polished shard fixed under the eaves, mirror to mirror until a sliver of noon is layered into a place that refuses the sun, a nice trick from people who knew their optics, and a mainstream aside tags along. Roman houses did use polished metal to throw light deeper into rooms. Small domestic heliostats by hand, while scholars argue about how common the practice was beyond villas full of taste. I turn away from the argument because the rope has stopped in front of a modest door that could belong to an ordinary pantry, except its lintel bears a tiny bull's head, Mithras peeking again, and the key plate is shaped like a laurel leaf. I press the bronze eye against it and the lock clicks in that proud way well-made locks click. Inside the pantry is colder than it should be and arranged with such tidy devotion that my shoulders drop a fraction. The jars labeled, the cordage coiled with sailor's patience, the wax tablets stacked and scored with a master's hand, and on the floor a mosaic too fine for a pantry presents a little city plan that omits half the streets and includes one I have not yet walked. A thread leads from the Laurel House to a low square marked with the eye alone. No bread, no rope, no amphorae. A place kept for watching or being watched. I blink and the mosaic darkens. Unwilling to name the path twice, the rope chooses for me, guiding me down a step and out into a lane that smells faintly of tar. A breath from the drowned port lifting along the stone like a rumor. The cadence of the wheel increases by a stingy hair and each turn lands in my ribs, a soft metronome that knows what it is counting. We arrive at a boundary I have crossed before and the stones hum their welcome or warning again. Less a sound than a mood that rests on the skin. I set my palm to one. Pale, waist-high, tool marks like tiny ribs, and it flickers silver the way their tops do when the bronze light wants to be kind. I tell the stone gently that I understand none of this and it forgives me by not moving. The auger's platform above remains a quiet coin. The sky past it stuck at a well-behaved noon, and I pass back inside where the sundial at the small garden keeps its stubborn refusal to work. The rope brushes my wrist. Good, good. Then falls slack in a thought I now recognize. Not fatigue, not doubt, but a courteous pause before the cue, and from some hidden height the wheel gives 3 slow turns. A pause, 3 more, and the hairline breath of a pulley paying out. Somewhere a hatch makes up its mind. Somewhere boards slide. Somewhere sand remembers how to shape itself. And in the stillness between clicks I hear the city ask the only question it ever asks. What will you feed? And my hand closes around the warm seed and the cold seed at once because I have not decided which part of myself I can afford to lose. The question lingers in my chest like a stone under still water as the rope begins to move again. Slow at first, as if it wants to be sure I carry both grains with the same weight. We follow a lane that narrows until my shoulders brush its walls, the stone warm to the touch. The scent of resin and fennel growing sharper. Somewhere ahead, the measured cyclic of the rope will deepens, turning heavier. The paving changes beneath me from neat squares to wide black strips that seem to swallow light rather than reflect it. Mainstream fact steadies my steps. Certain Roman streets use darker basalt not only for durability but for visual contrast to mark ceremonial ways. Fringe accounts add that some households repurposed such paths as coded routes, their patterns only visible in certain angles of light. The rope stops at a modest arch whose keystone bears the laurel flanked by two tiny bees. I duck under into a courtyard where a single tree grows from a square of pale gravel, its branches trained into a perfect circle above, the trunk wrapped in bronze bands engraved with the 7 household symbols. The golden grain in my pocket warms as I approach, the dormant one cooling further. I place the warm grain against the laurel band and hear a low hum from the gravel underfoot. The surface begins to shift, revealing a shallow mosaic well at the tree's base. The image within is the arena floor with the hatch closed. Then the laurel-marked roof, then a place I have not yet been. A narrow dock where water runs uphill beneath a stone arch. The vision fades and the gravel closes again. The rope tugs me toward a side door painted with a fading mural of 7 birds flying in a circle. Inside is a long gallery lined with narrow tables, each table holding a different object. Mirror, amphorae, coil of rope, loaf of bread, bronze key, laurel wreath, clay jar, each lit by its own small oil lamp. I walk the row, touching each in turn, and the lamps flare brighter, one after another, until all 7 burn steady. The rope coils at my feet as a section of the gallery wall slides open to reveal a stair descending into shadow. The air below carries the faint smell of salt and pitch. I descend into a low chamber where a bronze basin sits at the center, filled not with water but with fine golden sand. I place both grains onto its surface and the sand stirs, drawing the numeral 7 before swallowing them whole. A soft vibration hums through the floor and a bronze door on the far wall opens. Beyond it lies a narrow canal lit from beneath, the water flowing uphill toward a dim arch. The rope slips into the channel without disturbing the surface. I follow along a stone ledge until we reach the arch and step into a space that smells of the sea. The ceiling low, the air damp, and at the far end a dock waits, its stone edge marked with the laurel and the eye. The rope pauses, looking almost expectant, and somewhere above, faint but unmistakable, the rope will turn 3 slow times before stopping, as if the city itself is holding its breath. The dock stone edge is slick under my palm as I crouch, the uphill water slipping past in a soundless sheet. The rope glides to the very lip and dips its end as if tasting, the faint hum of the wheel above deepening into a lower register. The air here smells of pitch and wet rope. And beneath that something older, salt that has had centuries to soak into stone. Mainstream fact anchors me. Roman ports often layered construction over older quays, repurposing foundations and even dock lines from previous settlements. Fringe speculation adds that some of these layers were kept not for utility but to preserve certain alignments, channels that obeyed rituals rather than tides. I stand and follow the rope along the dock toward a shadowed alcove, its walls carved with the 7 household symbols in no particular order. In the center, a bronze stand holds a shallow dish filled with water so still it might be metal. I place the warm grain above it and the surface clouds before clearing to show the arena floor, with the hatch ajar, then the laurel-marked roof, then a tight view of the rope will turning faster than I have ever seen. The image fades and the water returns to stillness. The rope coils once around the stand before leading me through a narrow arch where the stone underfoot changes to polished black strips, each inlaid with a thread of bronze that catches the dim light. The passage bends twice before opening into a small circular chamber with 7 niches, each holding an object I have touched before, but here they are paired, mirror with amphorae, loaf with key, wreath with rope coil, the seventh niche empty, the dormant grain in my pocket chills. Further, the rope guides me to the empty niche and waits. I place both grains inside and the wall behind it shifts, revealing a staircase spiraling upward, the air warmer with each step. Scented with fennel and faint smoke, I emerge into a long colonnade overlooking a water channel running straight toward the city's edge. The bronze sky above reflected in its surface. At the far end of the colonnade stands a small altar bearing the laurel and the eye carved together. I step toward it and notice that each column I pass is marked with tally scratches grouped by 7. The last group always incomplete. I place my hand on the altar and feel a low vibration travel up my arm. The rope settles at my feet as somewhere in the distance the wheel turns 3 deliberate times and stops, leaving the air holding the kind of pause that demands I answer. Though I have no idea yet what the question will be. The altar's vibration steadies until it feels like the city is drumming 2 fingers against my wrist, patient but expectant. The rope curls once around my ankle, then uncurls as if reminding me the choice is mine. I lay both grains on the altar, warm with its open eye, cold with its sealed one, and the stone thrums a little louder, the bronze light above tightening in tone the way a string does when you twist the peg half a turn. A draft slips along the colonnade smelling of pitch and old salt, and beyond the balustrade the uphill water in the channel ripples against logic, reasserts itself and goes smooth as glass again. Mainstream fact steadies my breath. Inverted siphons and pressure heads let Roman aqueducts push water across valleys and even briefly uphill, a trick of height lost from view. Not sorcery but hydraulics wearing a magician's grin. Fringe rumor insists some port engineers learn to pinch or widen culverts to force particular rhythms into basins below. Little water metronomes that kept rites on time without a priest counting. And here the channel answers like a pupil who has studied all night. A low surge, then a hush, then a low surge. I press my palm on the laurel eye carving and the rope will far away turns exactly 3 times and stops. The altar warms enough to make the cold grain flinch against my skin, and the sealed eye strains as if it might open, not with a blink but with the slow stretch of wax left. Too near a flame, I lift both seeds and step to the balustrade. The water below faintly brighter now, and for an instant it reflects not the sky but the amphitheater floor, hatch ajar. Boards gleaming where sand should be, a staged mouth ready to speak. Then the reflection is only water again. I tell myself to choose quickly before the city chooses for me. But my body is slower than my mind. It wants one more loop through the old lessons. And the colonnade indulges me by opening a narrow side door that I swear was just flat wall. Inside a service corridor runs with the quiet of a good backstage. Pegs labeled in neat hand. Line, pulley, wedge, spare, hooks shaped like question marks. A coil hung just so, the sensible order that keeps miracles from tripping on their hems. Historians still debate whether the backstage engineering of provincial theaters and amphitheaters was standardized or a patchwork of local genius. The surviving scribbles point both ways, and here the patchwork has the discipline of a legion. A small brass clepsydra perches on a bracket, drip measured with a scratched winter and summer plate. Mainstream anchor, unequal hours bending with the season, but along the rim someone has cut tiny bees between the numerals, not decoration. I think a reminder that work hums even when no one looks. I return to the altar and the rope, more insistent now, guides me along the colonnade to a short stair that drops into a chamber like a dock's antechamber. Low arches, thick stone, the smell of tar. The sort of room where you would keep a boat if you kept boats indoors. Except here the boat is a bronze frame with a looped rope and a shallow cradle whose boards are scored with 7 narrow grooves. The wheel's breath comes down a shaft and brushes my face with the soft heat of work. The cradle shivers once as if receiving orders and stills. I lay the warm grain in the first groove and the sealed grain in the 7th. A not quite joke my nerves make. Hello, endpoints, and the cradle answers with a shy click that I feel in my teeth. The grooves glow a thin honey color, the loop rises, and from somewhere out in the water a low chord swells. Like a harbor throat clearing, the rope loops my waist loosely and pulls me onto a ledge where the floor tiles show a miniature of the city again, reduced to 7 marks and 1 palm, the palm exactly where we stand. I press it and a panel lifts to show a slit of water dark as ink sliding under my shoes. Uphill even here, and the altar's hum shifts from patient to nearly happy. I hear myself laugh, one of those museum whispers that manage to be embarrassed while no one is around to witness you. And the sound startles the bird that has been daring the bronze sky for the last hours. It flits once across the oculus and vanishes, a reminder that some things still flee when they should, and some do not. The rope tugs my hip and I follow it through a mouth-high tunnel where the walls are scratched with sailors' pocket drawings, knots, loaves, the little prancing bull, a wave, and every third scratch is an eye. It should be too much pattern. But it reads like a family's shorthand. Remember this. Mark that last longer than your fear. The tunnel opens onto the drowned port at last. A long, low hall where the ceiling rests on squat columns and the water sits all the way through. Calm as a sleeping lung, the keys are stubs, the bollards worn like old teeth, and on one slab a calendar is cut, fast-eye in miniature, a line of good letters and bad ones and market days. The kind you would consult before unloading grain so the gods do not trip your back. And the last 7 are scored deeper, as if someone pressed harder to make sure the wall remembered. Scholars still argue whether provincial calendars mimicked Rome's exactly or wandered as local. Politics liked, whether festivals slipped when ships were late or omens soured, whether count forward meant mercy or precision. I like them for still not agreeing. It means they have not flattened time into a tidy story yet. I kneel and set the warm seed on the edge of the carved week, then the cold one on the next day's square, and the water reaches soundlessly to kiss the stone and withdraw. The rope will turns once above and the hall exhales. A shift so small you could call it imagination if you were determined to stay sane. The bronze light bends through a row of mirrors mounted high under the beams, clever heliostat trick. Polished plates relaying a sliver of day from the open lanes through alleys into this throat. And a beam lands on a brass disc that has waited centuries for its job. The disc tilts and lights a palm-shaped recess cut into the dock, where I have placed nothing, so the recess chooses impatience and warms my skin until I lay the bronze eye there. It hums like a wasp in a bottle and the beam rides it for a count of 7, then glances away, satisfied. Fringe tidbit whispers in, beeswax was not just for sealing jars. Some boatmen smeared a thin coat on planks before caulking to quiet a hull's chatter, to make a vessel seem to move without sound on nights when sound mattered, a superstition by modern measure, a method by theirs. The rope taps twice toward a narrow gangway and I cross to a second dock where a wooden frame hangs over a square of still water and a chest rises the way chests always rise here, slow, polite, as if unwilling to splash the centuries. Bronze bands flaring with laurel wave. The lid opens on its own and shows me the same 4 props as ever. Half loaf, coil, tiny amphora, palm mirror, but arranged differently, the mirror on top this time, as if the city would like me to look first and touch second. I humor it and lift the mirror and it shows not a place but a sentence scratched on plaster. Return the borrowed eye, and behind the words a room I recognize only by smell. Fennel, beeswax, warm ink, the library. The mirror fogs and clears to show the arena boards again. The hatch breathing like a throat under a hand. Then the channel I stand beside. Then nothing, the rope slips the coil back into the chest as if to say not yet, we keep the tools where tools belong. Until we have the work for them. I set the mirror in its bed and the chest lowers, leaving the water unwrinkled. The wheel clicks twice and holds, waiting for me to answer the question I have tried to unhear since the amphitheater. Spoken sand. I think of the wax tablets that wrote beneath my stylus before I pressed, of the mosaics that redrew themselves to tutor a fool, of the little fountains that learned each other's beat, of the boundary stones that hum only when the palm admits its ignorance, of the augur's bird that crossed a forbidden square because the wing had somewhere to be, of the bread stamped with eyes because hunger teaches you to watch the oven as if it were a god, of the amphorae that sweat a not water that clings and will not wet you back, of the hourglass that emptied all at once and called the storm with a breath, fact to brace me. The empire ran on storage and schedules and a civic backbone of habit. Habits so polished they could be mistaken for magic. But it is also true that people made rooms to remember for them when days blurred, that fingers cut little marks for cycles bigger than one household could carry alone, that the line between ritual and infrastructure is a seam you feel with your nail but cannot pry apart. I take the sealed seed into my left palm and the open-eyed seed into my right and stand where the carved calendar bites the dock, a place of days and debt, and I speak softly because the hall deserves soft. Feed only what you can spare, the wax tablet said, and that is the mercy it offered me. I lay the cold, closed seed in the water, and it does not sink. It rests on the surface like a bead of oil, then slowly opens its eye without heat, and the eye looks not up at me but sideways at the carved week, and the carved week glows once. 7 little pulses like a quick breath and smooths, and the wheel above gives 3 deliberate turns and quits, as if a weight has been moved from one hook to the next. The warm seed burns my other palm 1 degree hotter and then cools by a breath. Not gone, not spent, but acknowledged. The rope loosens around my waist until it is only an invitation again. The mirrors under the beams blink a last sliver of noon into the dark and go dull, and the uphill water lifts a thin veil of ripples that run the wrong way and right themselves, art and hydraulics in a handshake. I stand there until the dock's patience becomes my own. Then pick up the bronze eye, slick now with condensate that feels like breath, and leave the sealed seed drifting where the carved week has taken it, not a sacrifice. I tell myself an accounting, a promise to return what I borrowed when the house is done with its lesson. Historians still debate whether Mithraic bull carvings in household niches meant true membership or simply a soldier's souvenir turned family charm. I do not know, but the tiny bull grins from a pillar as I pass, and that is enough of an omen for 1 hour. The rope finds my ankle again and leads me up a stair that remembers many feet and none. The bronze sky thins to a ribbon and the laurel roof finds my eyes like a coin catching light. The wheel breathes somewhere I cannot see, lighter now, less burden in its voice, and the city, polite as ever, asks no thanks, only the next footfall counting forward. Not back. The stair ends in a lane I do not recognize, its paving stones dark and slick with a faint sheen that seems to move under its own accord. The rope slides ahead, quiet but sure, and the air here has a sharper edge, smelling faintly of iron and the last breath before rain. The bronze sky above is reduced to thin panels between heavy eaves, their undersides carved with repeating laurel knots. Mainstream fact steadies my mind. Laurel garlands often adorned Roman eaves, and thresholds to signal celebration or divine favor. Yet fringe whispers say that in certain districts the knots were used as a code, each twist marking an event or decision in the life of the household. The rope turns into a courtyard so small it feels more like a pocket in the city's coat. At its center stands a short pillar crowned with a bronze dish, empty but for a dusting of fine sand. I step closer and the golden grain in my pocket warms while the cold one is gone. Taken by the carved week at the port, the sand in the dish stirs, drawing the numeral 6 before the windless air smooths it away. I touch the edge and the bronze hums faintly. The rope leads me toward a narrow colonnade that runs between 2 houses, each wall painted with the 7 household symbols arranged in mirrored order. In the center of the colonnade, a bronze door interrupts the path, its surface inlaid with bees chasing each other around an eye. I press the bronze eye from my pocket into the center, and the door unlocks with a single, deep click. Beyond is a chamber lined with shallow niches, each holding a small object I have seen before but here in miniature: tiny loaf, tiny key, tiny amphorae. Arrayed like offerings to a model of the city's own logic. At the far end stands a table cut from black basalt, its surface etched with a map that omits entire streets and yet feels more truthful than any I have walked. The rope coils beside it. Waiting, I trace a path from the laurel house to a square marked with the eye alone, and the basalt grows faintly warm under my fingers. The warmth runs ahead to a hidden seam that opens, revealing a spiral stair. I descend into a low hall whose walls are hung with narrow bronze plates engraved with dates, each plate showing 7-day spans, most complete. Some broken, one with a blank where the final day should be. Historians still debate whether these broken sequences mark calamities, interruptions in civic order, or personal rights hidden from official calendars. I step closer and the rope taps the plate. With the missing day, it tilts slightly, triggering a panel in the floor to slide aside, revealing a dark shaft that breathes air from somewhere below. I kneel and see the reflection of the rope, wheel in the water at the bottom. Turning faster now, the sound a quiet drumbeat counting forward. I stand and the rope pulls gently toward a side exit, the hall releasing me back into the narrow lane where the eaves twist their laurel knots, and as I pass beneath them the bronze sky opens a little, letting a single shaft of true daylight fall across my path like a coin tossed just for me. The shaft of daylight lingers across the paving stones as if weighing whether to retreat. The rope slides into it for a moment before leading me on, the bronze sky closing again above us in careful, measured panels. The lane bends twice before ending in a courtyard I have not yet seen, its floor a mosaic of 7 concentric rings broken at equal intervals, each break aligned with a short pedestal, and on each pedestal rests one of the household symbols carved from pale stone. Mainstream fact steadies me. Roman courtyards often used mosaic floors not only as decoration but to convey status, myths, or civic pride. Yet fringe speculation insists that some patterns served as private diagrams, a kind of floor-bound map for those who knew the code. The rope moves to the pedestal holding the laurel and coils beside it. I touch the carving and the ring nearest it glows faintly. The rope leads me in order to the bread. The key, the amphorae, the coil, the mirror, and finally the eye, each touch adding light until the mosaic hums with a complete circuit. The central circle begins to sink, revealing a stair spiraling downward, the air cooler and scented with beeswax and faint fennel. At the bottom lies a round chamber with a shallow pool in the center, its surface perfectly still until I step close. The golden grain in my pocket warms sharply, and the pool clouds before clearing to show the rope while turning at a near constant pace. The arena hatch open, the laurel-marked roof glowing at its seams, and a shadow I cannot place moving. Through a space I do not recognize, the image fades. The rope tugs me to a bronze chest set against the wall, its bands engraved with the laurel wave, and I, the same triad I have opened before. The bronze eye presses itself against the laurel band. The warm grain touches the wave, and my empty hand rests on the eye. The lid opens without sound. Inside are the same for objects: half loaf, rope coil, tiny amphorae, palm mirror, but the mirror lies face up, reflecting not my face but the map from the basalt table. This time with the eye square pulsing faintly, the rope loops around the chest. Then around my wrist, and somewhere above us the wheel turns 3 deliberate times before stopping. The air in the chamber holding that same pause I have felt at other thresholds. A space where the city waits for me to step forward, to bring what I have borrowed, or to carry it deeper, and the only sound is the soft lap of water against the pool's edge, counting the seconds I have left before the choice makes itself.